I'd like to first begin by thanking Tara for her work on the book. As she said, when I first delivered the manuscript to Marshall and Cavendish in October, it was just that. It was a manuscript, and it was completely written, but there was a lot of work to be done. And the relationship between an author and an editor is a very, very complex one. Especially if the editor is going to do some work and start editing the book and just not allow it to be published, like many people do nowadays. But Tara was very sensitive right from the very beginning and knew that I am a very prickly character and I don't like people touching anything that I call my own. But she managed to sort of open my eyes a little bit to what the reader actually experiences when they look at a manuscript, not from the author's point of view, which is oftentimes rigid and very personal, one person looking at the world. But a good editor, I believe, I've come to believe now, copy editor, turns the equation around and makes the author look out at the readers and what they're finally going to experience when they pick up the book in their hand. And so I thank her really very, very much for it, and the incredible support that she has given the book, even after publication. She's one of the strongest supporters of my writing in the first book, and I really do thank her for that. So going on to the book, I was going to read the back cover just to give you some context, but I see it's up here. Because most of you are probably already bored and been reading bits and bobs of the stuff on the screen, but I'll read it again just to put everything that I'm going to say into some sort of context. This is a description of the book. When a letter arrives from his dying father, the life Anil, the main protagonist, is carefully constructed in the city shatters. He leaves his friends, his work as a cartoonist and a painter of movie posters, and even his pregnant girlfriend to journey home to the town he ran away from 3 years earlier after his mother died. There, in the short time left, he attempts to uncover his father's ambitious political plans for him and who the enigmatic man is. He stumbles upon his mother's secret collection of paintings and is forced to re-evaluate her art and what she taught him as a boy. All these discoveries pull him back to the life he wanted to leave behind. So that's just to give you a little bit of context of where and how the story is set. Now I'm going to backtrack a little bit to the writing of the book. I started, as Tara mentioned, writing short stories and sketches when I was at the University of Chicago, late undergraduate life. That moved on more seriously when I was in graduate school, but I never did attempt to publish any of these things. I didn't think any of them were good enough. And about 10 years ago, a story developed which was a relationship between a son and a father that I thought had some promise, and I started developing it. So the story was set on a rubber plantation in Malaysia between a father and son. The father was dying of cancer. And as I looked at it, I thought the writing was actually decent, but too autobiographical, because my father did work on a rubber plantation, and he did die of cancer. So what I started doing with it was moving it forward into a novella form, and I found that I took to that form of writing much better than writing short stories. Short stories are very difficult, so they tell you never ever to attempt a short story until you're wise, become talented as a writer, and perhaps have like 20 years of experience, because it's the hardest of fiction forms, many people claim. So I added the character of the mother, who's a very, very strong female character, and I gave her something that I loved doing when I was in graduate school too, which was painting. So the mother, I painted in watercolors, but the mother has this very strong personal, she's not a professional painter in the book, but a strong personal relationship to art. What I wanted to do was have the characters play off each other, and to develop really, what I'm talking now is probably more conscious. As I was writing, of course, you don't know too much of the conscious themes that then appear, or subconscious themes. But finally, the book is, the main themes of the book, or the main themes running through the book are concepts of inheritance and legacies. Inheritance in terms of physical inheritance, what we inherit from our parents, in terms of money, wealth, property, but more importantly, spiritual, emotional, elements that run through us that we can't get rid, that's almost in our blood, these sort of traits that appear. So finally, I think that's really the depth of the book, I believe, comes from this interplay between the main character's relationship with his mother and father and how that develops. So I wanted to set it again, it's not a small background, but a larger background, so I added some politics into the book. The book is not a political book at all, but if you read it, you will, for those of you who know Malaysian politics, you will recognize some of the characters. Actually, I shouldn't be saying this in public, I'll probably get sued. I do make a disclaimer that any resemblance to characters, whether quick or dead, is purely coincidental. Let's say they're like, it's an amalgamation of many characters, so I need to extricate myself from this situation very quickly. And so, yeah, so it's not a political novel, but the political backdrop is very important. The setting is Malaysia, but perhaps it could have been somewhere else, but many authors who write their first-time books really set it in places that they know well, often where they grew up. And it's a coming-of-age novel, so it's obvious, in a way it's obvious that for most authors who write these Bildungsromans, that they're actually closer to their first experiences. Many people have asked me whether the book is autobiographical. And it's a tricky question to answer. I would say no, okay, because the mother and father in this book are nothing like my mother and father. I say that in the acknowledgements. The setting is in Muar, where I grew up, but like most authors, you take things from your real life, what you observe, and then you change them in so many different ways that at the end, for many writers, it would be unfair to say that the elements are autobiographical. To give you one example, the main protagonist in the book is called Anil, and I have a relative, we just discovered we're third cousins in the audience. Anil, can you? Okay, Anil is there. Sorry mate, the book is not about you. So, yeah, that's one example, but there are many examples for those of you who are related to me, who are looking for your character traits that appear in your, what can I say, if you find them good, if not, I'm not responsible. Then all the elements of the book were in place, so all I had to do was write it out, and this was very, very hard. The book took 8 years to write, not because it's a major work like Anna Karenina, War and Peace, that's 1,000 pages long. But I have a very busy day job. I have a life outside work. And it was extremely tricky to keep concentration and write. So every time I wrote for a few weeks, I gave up, not gave up, but put the book aside for a few months, and then it came back to it again and again. And it was just, it just took forever. But I must say that when I got up to about 50,000 words or so, sort of half of the final manuscript, even before I sent it to Tar, the manuscript was 105, 110,000 words, about 30% longer than when you see in this book. When I got to about 50,000+ words, which is half of that first draft manuscript, I then thought that it had something and I had the momentum to finish it, so I really pushed ahead. And you know that 2 years after that, I had the first draft of the book. I quit smoking at about the same time that I finished the first draft of the book. And really, this is all, in all honesty, it's true. I finished the book about probably 7 days before or after I quit smoking. I don't keep a diary, but it was very, very close to that time, December of 2009. And little did I know that quitting smoking was to prove much easier than getting the darn thing published. Much, much harder. I didn't know where to begin, so you know, I have a career in publishing, but it's a very different sort of publishing. So I sent the book out to a few literary agents, got rejected. They were kind enough, but then I started sending it out to a literary agency that then commented in the book and gave me a lot of help. So I spent about 6 to 9 months redrafting the book. And the second time around, things were much, much better. And you know, I was very fortunate that Marshall Cavendish accepted the book for publication in October 2010 and 11, sorry. And the book was published in March of this year.